Raindrops tapped softly on broken rooftops, like gentle whispers comforting a shattered world. Amidst the silent aftermath of Riverdale's darkest storm, a lone German shepherd limped through the rubble, eyes searching, heart aching, each step a quiet prayer for the family he'd lost. Have you ever felt that kind of longing? Before we continue, gently let us know in the comments from where in the world you're listening right now, because every heart has a story worth sharing. The sky had darkened to a bruised purple as wind tore through the peaceful streets of Riverdale, howling like a wild creature unleashed. Ranger, a strong and devoted German shepherd, his deep sable coat streaked with rain and mud, moved swiftly beside his rescue handler, Mark Evans. Mark, a tall, gentle man in his early 30s, had sharp green eyes and a steady voice, known for calming frightened souls amid disaster. They navigated through the chaotic streets, searching desperately for families trapped inside collapsing houses, while thunder shook the ground beneath their feet. Ranger was specially trained for disasters, his senses sharp enough to detect life amid chaos. As he trotted forward, paws splashing through rising floodwaters, his sensitive ears caught a faint cry from the Wilsons' house at the corner of Maple Street. Without hesitation, he turned sharply, pulling at the leash in Mark's firm grasp. Mark understood instantly, nodding to the rest of the team before quickly following Ranger's determined lead. Inside the battered home, the Wilson family was trapped upstairs, panic-stricken as water rapidly filled their living room. Mark secured ropes and equipment, instructing Ranger to remain close as he climbed to reach the family through a shattered window. Ranger obeyed, his intense amber eyes never leaving Mark's movements. But then, a sudden blast of wind tore away a large oak tree nearby, its trunk groaning before crashing violently onto the Wilsons' roof. Debris flew everywhere, momentarily blinding Mark, and severing the line that bound him to Ranger. Confused but driven by instinct, Ranger barked urgently, searching through thick smoke and driving rain for Mark's familiar scent, but his handler was nowhere to be found. His heart raced as the realization of isolation struck hard. Above, lightning flashed violently, briefly illuminating Mark's form unconscious among debris. Ranger leaped desperately toward him, but more wreckage tumbled down, narrowly missing the courageous dog and forcing him back. Despite Ranger's frantic efforts, debris continued to fall relentlessly, blocking his path. He whined helplessly, pawing at broken beams and splinters. Time seemed frozen, yet slipped mercilessly away, until another massive gust ripped through the damaged structure, knocking Ranger hard onto the muddy street below. Darkness engulfed him as his body struck the ground, pain washing over him like an unforgiving wave. When Ranger awoke, the storm had passed, leaving behind eerie silence. His body trembled from pain and exhaustion, yet the first thought was Mark. Slowly rising, each step in agony, he searched among the scattered remnants, sniffing desperately for the comforting scent of his handler, his partner, his friend. But Mark's presence was gone, leaving only echoes of happier memories they'd shared. Riverdale was unrecognizable now, reduced to a collection of splintered wood, shattered windows, and broken dreams. Ranger moved through the devastated streets, his deep eyes filled with sorrow and confusion, yet within him burned an unyielding purpose: to find the team he had lost. His loyalty, once forged in joyous moments of companionship and trust, now drove him forward through unspeakable loneliness. Each shadowed corner, each abandoned home whispered emptiness, but Ranger's spirit refused to falter. He pressed on, paws bloodied and body bruised, driven by memories of Mark's gentle hand stroking his fur, of whispered words of encouragement during training, and countless lives they had saved together. These memories became Ranger's guiding beacon, a lifeline of hope amidst devastation. As nightfall descended softly upon the broken town, Ranger finally stopped beside what once was the familiar rescue center. Now it stood silent, shattered by the storm, a monument to loss and bravery. The brave German shepherd collapsed gently onto the wet ground, his breathing shallow, his eyes fixed toward the empty sky, silently pleading for the return of the family he had known. He lay still, sensing deeply that the storm had taken far more than buildings or streets. It had taken away the bonds he cherished most. But deep inside Ranger's loyal heart, beneath pain and sorrow, a fragile flame of determination still flickered, promising he would not surrender until he fulfilled the duty engraved in every heartbeat: to protect, to rescue, to find those who needed him most. Morning rose pale and gentle over Riverdale, its soft glow reflecting sadly upon streets lined with shattered dreams and silent rubble. Ranger awoke with a heavy sigh, his muscular frame stiffened by injury and exhaustion. He lifted himself slowly, each movement careful and deliberate, paws aching from wounds sustained during the storm. His dark, intelligent eyes scanned the wreckage around him, hoping desperately for signs of familiar faces or scents he knew by heart. Yet only silence answered his silent plea, an emptiness deeper than he'd ever known. Ranger began to wander slowly through the streets, once vibrant with life, now hauntingly quiet and empty, debris crunching softly beneath his paws. His sable fur, once sleek and clean, was now tangled and caked with dried mud, yet he carried himself with quiet dignity, a solitary guardian amidst the ruin. His sharp senses were still attuned to every sound, every whisper of movement, but each hopeful glance ended in disappointment. His team, his companions, were nowhere to be found. As Ranger moved through the deserted neighborhoods, familiar landmarks now twisted and broken, memories flooded him with warmth and sorrow intertwined. He recalled sunny afternoons spent training alongside Mark Evans, the man who had patiently shaped him into a disciplined rescue dog. Mark's laughter had always resonated clearly, brightening even the toughest training days. Ranger could still feel Mark's gentle yet firm hand on his fur, guiding him through obstacle courses, teaching him to detect hidden scents, and encouraging bravery when faced with danger. One memory stood vividly in Ranger's mind, a crisp autumn day when Mark had knelt beside him beneath a sprawling maple tree, his green eyes filled with pride. "You know, Ranger," Mark had whispered, stroking his thick coat gently, "there'll come a time when people rely on you more than anyone else. Be brave, be strong, and never forget, no matter how alone you feel, you carry all of us in your heart." Ranger had understood the meaning in Mark's voice, even then. It was a promise, a bond between handler and dog, unbreakable despite any distance or circumstance. The sharp ache of Mark's absence now pressed hard against Ranger's heart. He paused briefly in front of what had once been a bustling cafe, where he and Mark often rested after intense training sessions. Ranger gazed quietly at the shattered windows, recalling the cheerful waitress named Sophie, whose bright smile and honey-colored hair always brought warmth even on the coldest days. But the cafe, like everything else, now lay quiet and empty, echoing his own loneliness. Slowly, Ranger turned his path toward the rescue center, hoping desperately that some part of it had survived. When he arrived, however, his heart sank deeply. The structure he once knew intimately, the place that represented safety, companionship, and purpose, was utterly destroyed. Fragments of familiar items lay scattered among the ruins, torn rescue vests, broken equipment, and training ropes frayed beyond repair. Ranger sniffed softly at a torn glove that smelled faintly of Mark's reassuring presence, but it only deepened his sorrow. The devastation was complete, final, leaving him with an unbearable sense of isolation. Standing amidst the debris, Ranger lifted his gaze toward the open sky, a quiet whimper escaping him as grief filled every fiber of his being. His life had been shaped by dedication and loyalty, bonds that now seemed irrevocably shattered. But deep within him, beneath layers of pain and loss, lingered an instinctive resolve, Mark's words echoing faintly, "Be brave. Be strong." It was this quiet voice that steadied his trembling heart, reminding him that giving up was never part of their training. As twilight began painting the sky in hues of soft purple and deep blue, Ranger gathered his weary strength once more, stepping gently away from the remains of his past. Each careful step forward became a quiet act of bravery, each moment a tribute to Mark's enduring teachings. Though his heart felt unbearably heavy, Ranger knew his journey wasn't over. Somewhere within the shattered remains of Riverdale, someone might still need him, and Mark's voice whispered gently through his memories, "You carry all of us in your heart." Evening shadows stretched gently across Riverdale, the fading sun painting the sky in shades of lavender and rose, a quiet beauty starkly contrasting the ruins below. Ranger's paws dragged slightly as fatigue settled heavily into his bones, yet his senses remained keenly alert, driven by the persistent feeling that somewhere close, someone needed him desperately. His sensitive ears suddenly perked up, capturing a distant, fragile sound that sent an urgent spark through his weary heart. A child's soft, muffled cry for help, barely audible, yet unmistakably real. Without hesitation, Ranger quickened his pace, his injured body protesting yet obedient to the powerful instincts deeply embedded in his training. He moved swiftly through the debris-filled streets, weaving between twisted metal and splintered wood, following the gentle sobs that became clearer and more heartbreaking with each step. His heart raced faster as he reached a partially collapsed house, the once cozy home now reduced to fractured walls and shattered memories. There, trapped behind fallen timber, he saw Abby for the first time. Abby was just 7 years old, with soft brown curls framing her delicate, tear-streaked face, her small hands trembling as she clutched tightly to her favorite stuffed bunny. Her wide blue eyes were filled with fear and confusion, her quiet cries tugging painfully at Ranger's heart. Beside the debris, Thomas, Abby's father, worked frantically, his strong hands bleeding from desperate efforts to free his daughter. Thomas, a kind-hearted man in his early 30s, had a rugged yet gentle appearance, deep worry lines etched upon his face as he struggled helplessly against heavy beams pinning Abby's small form. Thomas turned at the sound of Ranger's approach, his eyes briefly clouded with uncertainty, unsure if the wounded dog posed danger or hope. Ranger, sensing Thomas's caution, lowered his body in gentle reassurance, his expressive eyes fixed firmly on Abby, communicating clearly his intention to help. Without waiting for further acknowledgement, Ranger approached the wreckage, sniffing carefully to assess the fragile situation, his keen intelligence swiftly identifying the safest way to reach Abby. Drawing upon every ounce of remaining strength, Ranger began to dig carefully but firmly at the debris surrounding Abby, his paws working tirelessly, ignoring pain as splinters scraped his tender skin. Abby's eyes widened in wonder and hope as she saw Ranger's determined face, her small voice whispering softly through tears, "Good dog, please help me." The whispered words filled Ranger with renewed energy, reminding him vividly of Mark's gentle encouragement, a voice now resonating strongly within his heart. Together, Ranger and Thomas worked side by side in silent unity, Thomas pulling aside heavy timber as Ranger carefully dug beneath. With a final push of strength, Ranger created just enough space for Abby's tiny frame to move. Thomas reached down quickly, his strong arms lifting Abby gently from the wreckage, cradling her protectively against his chest, his voice breaking softly in relief. "Thank God. Thank you." Ranger watched quietly, his heart swelling with silent pride and profound relief. Thomas knelt beside Ranger, tears blurring his vision, gently stroking the German shepherd's battered head with sincere gratitude. "You saved my daughter," Thomas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I owe you everything." Abby clung tightly to her father, looking down at Ranger with immense affection and wonder. In that powerful moment, an unspoken bond formed among them, forged through mutual relief and shared vulnerability. Thomas carefully carried Abby and helped Ranger back to their small truck parked nearby, gently lifting Ranger's exhausted body onto a makeshift bed of soft blankets. Ranger allowed himself to relax, feeling for the first time in days a comforting human touch, a familiar sense of safety. Thomas drove slowly toward their temporary shelter, speaking softly to Abby about courage and resilience, while reaching back occasionally to reassure Ranger, whose tired eyes drifted shut, comforted by the warmth of newfound companionship. In the calm that followed the chaos, beneath the gently darkening sky, Ranger's breathing steadied as sleep claimed him, carrying him softly into dreams filled with images of Abby's grateful smile and Thomas's protective presence. Deep inside, Ranger felt the stirrings of healing, not only for his battered body, but also for his aching heart, knowing he was no longer alone. And somewhere within the quiet peace of the moment, Mark's gentle voice echoed clearly in Ranger's dreams. Be brave, be strong. You carry all of us in your heart. Days slowly melted into gentle routine as Thomas carefully nursed Ranger back to health in their modest, temporary shelter. Each morning sunlight filtered softly through tattered curtains, touching Ranger's fur with golden warmth as he rested near Abby's bed, quietly watching over the sleeping child. Gradually, the once strong German Shepherd regained strength, his injured paws, healing and coat regaining its proud shine. Abby doted affectionately on Ranger, gently brushing his fur and whispering heartfelt gratitude into his sensitive ears, her bright laughter lifting the heavy shadows of the past. One quiet afternoon, while Ranger lay curled up beside Abby as she colored pictures of happier days, Thomas sat nearby examining Ranger's collar more closely. As Thomas turned the worn leather over in his hands, he noticed something partially hidden, embedded beneath dried mud, a small metal badge. With careful fingers, Thomas cleaned it gently, uncovering the engraved words, "Riverdale Search and Rescue." Beneath it, a faded identification number gleamed, confirming Ranger's proud history as a rescue dog, a noble past silently carried beneath his quiet humility. Thomas gazed at Ranger with newfound respect and understanding, suddenly comprehending the deep, silent wisdom in the dog's gentle eyes. Ranger, sensing Thomas's quiet discovery, rose and softly padded to Thomas's side, resting his head on the man's knee, eyes reflecting quiet trust and loyalty. Thomas stroked Ranger's fur tenderly, whispering softly, "You're a true hero, Ranger. I promise to honor the brave life you've lived." Moved by the discovery, and wishing to better understand the noble dog who had rescued his daughter, Thomas decided to revisit the damaged rescue center, guided gently by Ranger himself. Together, man and dog slowly walked through streets that were gradually coming alive again with recovery efforts. But the rescue center remained heartbreakingly quiet, a stark reminder of sacrifice and loss. At the sight, Ranger paused, his body trembling slightly, eyes filled with both recognition and sorrow as memories flooded his senses. Thomas followed silently, respectfully, as Ranger moved carefully among the ruins, pausing briefly at places once filled with camaraderie and bravery. The German Shepherd eventually led Thomas to a partially buried wooden box, its edges singed and splintered. With gentle effort, Thomas opened the fragile container, revealing treasured belongings, a faded photograph showing smiling faces of rescue workers with Ranger proudly sitting at their side, worn gloves marked with names, and personal effects belonging to those who once bravely served alongside Ranger. As Thomas carefully held each item, his eyes welled with unshed tears, profoundly moved by the courageous lives that had been lost. Ranger lay quietly beside him, his soulful eyes focused sadly upon the cherished objects, recognizing each scent, each faded memory. Thomas's hand rested gently on Ranger's neck, feeling the dog's sorrowful breathing as Ranger mourned silently for those he had lost, friends, heroes, companions who had given everything during the devastating storm. In that quiet moment amidst ruin and memory, Thomas truly understood the depths of Ranger's gentle heart. He whispered softly to the grieving dog, promising to preserve the memory of Ranger's brave companions, ensuring their sacrifices would never be forgotten. Ranger's gaze lifted slowly, locking deeply onto Thomas's compassionate eyes, gratitude and quiet acceptance forming an unspoken bond of shared remembrance and respect. As evening's gentle shadows stretched across the remains of Riverdale's rescue center, Thomas carefully returned the treasured box to its resting place, marking it gently with stones, a quiet monument to courage and friendship. Ranger lingered beside the site briefly, nose gently touching the stones, a final, tender farewell to the team that had shaped his heart and soul. When Ranger finally turned away, walking beside Thomas, his movements held quiet dignity, carrying within him an enduring legacy of bravery and love. As they returned home, the twilight sky softly blanketing the recovering town, Ranger walked closely beside Thomas, comforted by the man's steady presence, knowing now he was understood, honored, and not alone. And as the gentle night settled around them, Ranger felt peace slowly return, quiet but profound, carrying the memory of his fallen companions forever deep within his heart, their brave spirits living eternally in the quiet strength he now shared with Thomas and Abby. Days in Riverdale quietly slipped into weeks, and the once devastated town gradually blossomed with new life and cautious hope. Thomas worked tirelessly alongside neighbors, rebuilding homes and restoring the community's lost spirit. Ranger always stayed near, his calm presence offering silent comfort and encouragement. But Ranger's greatest bond blossomed deeply with Abby, whose laughter had become brighter, whose eyes had regained their gentle spark, reflecting happiness previously dimmed by sorrow. Abby and Ranger became inseparable, their friendship a gentle balm easing painful memories. Each morning, Abby, dressed in her favorite lavender dress and white sneakers, would rush to the porch, waiting patiently for Ranger to follow her. Together, they explored the slowly recovering neighborhood, Abby's small hand gently gripping Ranger's collar, her chatter blending seamlessly with the soothing hum of renewed life around them. Yet Abby still struggled with fear at times, especially during thunderstorms or the sound of heavy wind. Her tiny frame would shiver involuntarily, memories of loss flooding back despite her best efforts. Ranger, sensing her distress, always moved closer, softly resting his head in her lap or gently nudging her hands until she smiled. His patient eyes gazed into hers, silently promising protection and unconditional love. Abby learned to rely on Ranger's quiet strength, her fears slowly diminishing, replaced by comforting trust. Thomas watched their bond with quiet awe, seeing clearly the transformative impact Ranger had on his daughter's heart. His own heart, burdened heavily by grief and worry, began to heal as he observed the gentle companionship forming between Abby and Ranger. Thomas had spent sleepless nights after the storm, feeling hopeless and uncertain, burdened by the weight of his responsibilities. But Ranger's unwavering loyalty and courage gradually inspired a sense of optimism Thomas had thought lost forever. Each evening after the day's labor ended, Thomas sat quietly beside Ranger, watching Abby chase fireflies, her laughter echoing gently through the twilight air. Thomas found himself confiding softly in Ranger, sharing unspoken fears and quiet dreams, feeling understood in ways words alone could never convey. Ranger listened carefully, his steady breathing a comforting rhythm, his presence offering profound reassurance. Slowly, Thomas's perspective shifted. Instead of seeing loss, he began to recognize possibilities, opportunities born from hardship, the beauty in resilience and recovery. As weeks turned gently into months, Ranger sensed the quiet shift in Thomas and Abby, their hearts growing stronger, their smiles becoming more frequent, genuine reflections of healing souls. Ranger himself, although deeply attached to this newfound family, often gazed toward the horizon, his heart still quietly holding echoes from the past. Though happy, he could never fully erase memories of Mark, his beloved teammates, or the heroic purpose etched deeply into his being. On quiet afternoons, Ranger visited the small memorial Thomas had lovingly placed near the rebuilt rescue center, a gentle garden filled with wildflowers and small stones, each carefully engraved with the names of his fallen companions. Ranger would lie there quietly, breathing deeply, eyes reflecting gentle sadness mingled with pride. His bond with Thomas and Abby had become a new chapter in his life, but Ranger honored those who had come before, preserving their memory as an enduring part of his gentle spirit. One evening, as stars softly illuminated the darkening sky, Thomas joined Ranger beside the memorial garden, gently resting a reassuring hand on his loyal friend's back. "You'll never forget them," Thomas whispered tenderly, "and neither will we. You brought us hope, Ranger, and that's something we'll always cherish." Ranger lifted his head softly, looking deeply into Thomas's sincere eyes, understanding flowing silently between them. In Thomas, Ranger had found someone who truly understood the balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. Together, they slowly returned home, Abby's joyful laughter greeting them warmly as she ran to hug Ranger tightly, her small arms encircling his strong neck. The German shepherd's tail wagged gently, his heart at peace, knowing he had found a family who truly loved and respected him. Though he carried memories of loss, Ranger had discovered something deeply precious, a new beginning built from mutual understanding, compassion, and love. As Abby drifted gently to sleep that night, softly nestled against Ranger's comforting warmth, Thomas quietly reflected on their shared journey. Ranger had not only rescued Abby from physical danger, he had rescued them both from emotional wounds they believed impossible to heal. Thomas understood now that healing was not about forgetting, but about learning to hold both sorrow and joy simultaneously. Watching Ranger's steady breathing, Thomas knew deep inside his heart they had all finally begun to heal. Riverdale slowly breathed again, the town now vibrant with voices of neighbors working together, rebuilding lives and homes brick by brick, heart by heart. Ranger walked peacefully beside Abby through familiar streets, now decorated with flowers, fresh paint, and smiling faces. His once heavy steps were now steady, echoing quiet strength gained from the companionship of his new family. Yet within his calm gaze remained a gentle shadow, memories of his lost companions forever etched deeply into his heart. One tranquil afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered gently through rustling leaves, Ranger sensed a faint, urgent sound drifting softly from behind a small mound of fallen branches near the edge of the recovering town. Curious and concerned, Ranger approached cautiously, his sharp ears twitching, heart quickening as he caught a fragile whimper, a cry for help echoing gently from beneath the debris. Carefully, he nudged aside sticks and leaves, uncovering a trembling, frightened puppy, no more than a few weeks old, shivering and abandoned, its tiny fur-covered body thin and muddy, eyes pleading for warmth and safety. The pup was a small Labrador retriever, its coat, a soft, creamy yellow, eyes wide and dark, mirroring Ranger's gentle concern. Without hesitation, Ranger gently nudged the little puppy closer, offering comforting warmth with his own body, quiet reassurance flowing silently between them. Recognizing the pup's need for care, Ranger softly barked, alerting Abby and Thomas, who quickly joined him, their hearts instantly moved by the helpless creature, curled trustingly beside their beloved companion. Thomas gently lifted the tiny puppy, carefully brushing dirt from its trembling body. Abby immediately wrapped her arms tenderly around it, eyes shining brightly with compassion and determination. "We'll take care of you," she whispered softly, her voice full of love and certainty. Ranger watched carefully, understanding deeply the significance of this gentle moment, the pup's rescue symbolizing something profoundly meaningful, a continuation of the noble duty he and his former teammates had always upheld. From that day forward, Ranger became the pup's guardian and mentor, patiently teaching him strength, loyalty, and courage, mirroring lessons he himself once learned under Mark's patient guidance. They named the Puppy Scout, a fitting tribute to the brave companions Ranger had lost, ensuring their courage and sacrifice would always live on. Scout quickly flourished under Ranger's gentle care, playful and spirited, yet deeply respectful of his wise protector, their bond echoing the friendships Ranger once treasured so deeply. As Scout grew stronger, Ranger, Thomas, and Abby's bond strengthened even further, each discovering profound comfort and healing in the pup's innocent joy and playful energy. Thomas recognized fully the depth of Ranger's role in their lives, realizing the dog hadn't merely appeared by chance. Ranger had arrived precisely when their fractured hearts needed healing, mending them carefully through quiet strength and unconditional love. Months passed gently, seasons changing softly from golden autumn to tranquil spring, Riverdale blossoming fully into renewed life and hope. One clear, serene afternoon, Ranger and Scout sat quietly atop a gentle hill overlooking the reconstructed town, their calm eyes taking in the beauty of recovered homes and smiling families. The peaceful scene filled Ranger's heart with quiet pride and gentle satisfaction, the realization of his unspoken promise to protect, rescue, and honor those he loved. Abby and Thomas joined them, sitting quietly beside their beloved companions, their presence completing a circle of deep trust and shared gratitude. Abby softly placed her hand on Ranger's back, whispering tenderly, "You saved us, Ranger. Thank you." Ranger responded with a gentle glance, his wise eyes reflecting quiet joy and profound love. Thomas silently nodded in agreement, his gaze resting upon the thriving town below, his heart filled with immense gratitude for the brave dog who had transformed their broken family into one bound deeply by trust, courage, and love. As sunlight gently dipped beneath the horizon, casting a warm glow over Riverdale, Ranger, Scout, Thomas, and Abby remained quietly together, their bond stronger than ever, reflecting the profound truth of their shared journey, that out of sorrow and devastation can emerge strength, compassion, and hope. Ranger knew deeply that his life had entered a meaningful new chapter, yet his heart continued to honor the memories of those who had shaped him. And as evening's quiet shadows wrapped gently around them, Ranger understood clearly his purpose had not ended. It had simply evolved into a legacy of enduring love, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. In the end, life gently teaches us that the deepest wounds can heal through kindness, loyalty, and the courage to love again. Sometimes heroes have four paws, quiet eyes, and hearts that speak louder than words ever could. If Ranger's journey touched your heart, please consider subscribing, and together we'll discover more stories where love finds us in unexpected places.